The prices of everything from groceries to cars are rising, and it's all because of an escalating trade war between the US, Canada, and the EU. But why should you care? Tariffs and trade wars aren't just headlines, they're directly impacting your wallet. From higher grocery bills to soaring car prices and even energy costs, these trade disputes are putting more pressure on everyday consumers. In this video, we're breaking down exactly how the US-Canada trade war is driving up costs and what you can expect moving forward. We'll dive into how these global trade shifts are already affecting your daily life and what it means for your future expenses. Keep watching to discover how this trade war could change your spending habits, and make sure to subscribe for more updates on how global events are reshaping your world. The US imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum from Canada, worth an estimated $16 billion in trade value. This was a major blow to Canadian industries, particularly since Canada is the US's largest foreign supplier of steel, exporting around $5.3 billion worth of steel annually. In response, Canada immediately retaliated, imposing a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of US goods, including automotive parts, agricultural products, and industrial machinery. This includes key goods like soybeans, corn, and beef, which are critical US exports. Canada's retaliatory tariffs are designed to hit high-value US goods hard, but it also affects industries that rely on steel and aluminum, such as construction and manufacturing. What does this mean for you? If you're in the US, the price of cars could rise by up to $1,000 per vehicle. Steel prices are already up by 20 to 25% since the tariffs were implemented, and the effects are trickling down to everything from home construction to appliances. With the average cost of building a new home rising by $6,000 per unit due to higher steel costs, home buyers may feel the pinch. Additionally, Ontario's unexpected move to target electricity exports was a real game changer. Ontario sends about 14.6 terawatt-hours of electricity to the US annually. The 25% tariff imposed on these exports could raise costs for states like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, where millions of consumers rely on affordable Canadian power. Energy prices in these states could rise, with an estimated increase of 5 to 10% in electricity rates, leading to higher utility bills for American households. While Canada was taking action, another key player, the European Union (EU), wasn't sitting on the sidelines either. Following Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum, the EU quickly retaliated with tariffs valued at €26 billion. The EU targeted over 2,800 US products, including Levi's jeans, Boeing aircraft, and whiskey. The EU's response was aimed at balancing the playing field and ensuring that its businesses weren't adversely affected by the US tariffs. These tariffs impact machinery, cars, and agricultural goods that are critical exports for the US. While the EU's retaliatory tariffs may seem less significant in the short term, they send a strong signal about the growing trend of protectionist measures in global trade. For European consumers, the prices of US goods like Boeing airplanes and whiskey could increase by 10 to 15%. For example, Levi's jeans could rise by 10% in Europe due to the new tariffs, adding a significant cost to consumer goods. On the flip side, US manufacturers that export to the EU could see a reduction in their sales as tariffs drive up costs for European consumers. This also has a knock-on effect on US manufacturers, who are facing increased production costs as materials like steel become more expensive. US businesses are already reporting an estimated $3.5 billion per month in losses due to these tariffs. Mexico has chosen a more deliberate and cautious approach to the ongoing trade dispute with the US. While Canada and the EU responded quickly, Mexico's government, under President Claudia Sheinbaum, chose negotiation over immediate retaliation. However, Mexico has not ruled out tariffs on key US products such as corn, soybeans, and beef, which make up a large portion of US exports to Mexico. What does this mean for the average US consumer? If Mexico imposes retaliatory tariffs on agricultural goods such as corn and beef, the prices of these products could increase. For instance, beef prices could increase by 5 to 7% due to the tariffs on U.S. exports, leading to higher grocery bills for American families. Mexico's reluctance to escalate the conflict stems from its heavy reliance on U.S. trade, especially in sectors like automobiles and oil. The auto industry in Mexico supplies critical parts to major U.S. manufacturers like General Motors and Ford, and any disruption in the flow of these goods could significantly raise production costs for U.S. car manufacturers. In the short term, U.S. consumers may not see a direct impact, but if tensions continue, the price of cars could rise due to higher production costs, making it more expensive for you to purchase a vehicle. As the trade war continues, Canada is diversifying its trade relationships in response to U.S. tariffs. Canada's trade with the EU has grown by 65% since the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement (CETA) was enacted. With CETA, Canadian businesses now have greater access to European markets, which is helping to offset the decline in U.S. exports. In addition to Europe, Canada is expanding its ties with Asia and Latin America, encouraging Canadian businesses to focus on alternative markets. For example, Canada's oil exports to countries like Japan and South Korea have increased significantly, reducing its reliance on the U.S. market. Canada now provides over 52% of the U.S.'s imported oil, and it's looking to expand this export to Asian markets where demand for oil is growing. For Canadian consumers, this shift will bring about more European and Asian products at competitive prices, potentially lowering the cost of goods across the board. For U.S. consumers, the downside is clear. Reduced Canadian exports to the U.S. could lead to higher prices on everything from automotive parts to energy resources, especially as the supply from Canadian sources decreases. The U.S. stock market is already feeling the economic consequences of these trade wars. After Trump's tariff announcement, the S&P 500 dropped by 1.33%, with key sectors like steel, aluminum, and automobiles seeing a drop in stock value. Companies like Ford, GM, and Tesla have had to adjust their supply chains in response to the rising cost of materials. For everyday consumers, the fallout is expected to continue as businesses adjust their prices. According to the National Association of Home Builders, home construction costs have risen by $16,000 per new home due to higher steel and aluminum prices. This means that new home buyers may be forced to pay more for their homes, further driving up housing costs. U.S. car buyers are also feeling the heat, as car prices are set to rise by $1,000 per vehicle, with steel prices increasing by 25% and aluminum prices jumping by 20%. Car manufacturers are forced to pass on these extra costs to consumers. Higher prices for consumer goods, such as appliances and electronics, will also hit U.S. families hard. In one of the most surprising moves, Ontario imposed a 25% tariff on electricity exports to the U.S.
One of the world's busiest ports in terms of shipping movement, cargo handled,
states
and
like New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, which depend on this electricity, could face rising rates and even potential blackouts. Electricity prices could increase by 5 to 10%
via 3 cross-boundary ferry terminals, 9 container terminals, and 8.
With higher electricity costs, U.S. businesses that rely on affordable energy, such as manufacturing plants, will see a hit to their profit margins. In some areas, rolling blackouts could even become a reality if the situation escalates further. The question on everyone's mind: what happens next? As tariffs continue to rise, global supply chains are being disrupted. U.S. consumers are already facing rising prices on everything from gasoline to grocery store products, and the future looks uncertain. The U.S. stock market continues to face sharp declines, with analysts forecasting greater volatility in the coming months. Can the U.S. economy withstand this pressure? The short answer: it depends. If the trade tensions continue, the U.S. may face an economic recession, especially if consumer confidence begins to drop further. The real impact will likely be felt through rising consumer prices, job insecurity, and an uncertain future for major industries. The U.S.-Canada trade war is not just a political issue, it's one that will affect you directly. From higher grocery prices to rising
Sign
car
a better
costs,
deal
the
that
economic
protects our
fallout of
jobs,
these trade
that
wars is
upholds
something
our
we'll
democratic-
all have to deal with. The prices of steel, aluminum, and energy are rising, and these increases will be passed on to the consumer, hitting your wallet in new and unexpected ways. Stay tuned. As this trade war continues to evolve, the next developments could have even greater consequences on the global economy. And it's important to stay informed on how these global events are shaping your daily life. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates on how global events are impacting your life. A bold move from Mexico could soon make your morning commute more expensive, push car prices through the roof,
from the economic
and even
survival
leave you paying
to the
more at
military.
grocery store. As tensions between the U.S. and Mexico intensify, this trade war isn't just a battle of tariffs. It's a fight that could hit your wallet where it hurts the most. With Mexico controlling 10% of
Every
U.S.
night
crude oil imports and supplying over $50 billion in auto parts annually, the ripple effects are about to be felt across the country. In the latest round of escalating trade tensions, Mexico has put the U.S. in a tough spot, and the fallout could soon impact your everyday life. From a potential $0.5 rise in gas prices to $1,200 increases in car prices, the stakes are high. Mexico is the largest supplier of auto parts to the U.S., accounting for a significant portion of the $50 billion in parts imported each year. Meanwhile, the $1.5 billion lost U.S. farmers could face if tariffs target agricultural exports like corn and beef only adds fuel to the fire. As these two nations square off, it's clear that this conflict is far more than just politics. It's an economic showdown with real consequences for you. Let's dive into the numbers and discover how this trade battle could disrupt your daily life. Let's start with oil, an issue that's both economic and political. Mexico is a major supplier of crude oil to U.S. refineries, particularly those located in Texas. The relationship is deeply entrenched, with Mexican crude oil making up a significant portion of the U.S. oil supply. In fact, Mexico is the third largest exporter of crude oil to the U.S. after Canada and Saudi Arabia. As of 2023, Mexico exports around 733,000 barrels of crude oil per day to the United States, which accounts for approximately 11% of U.S. crude imports. If Mexico decides to restrict this flow, U.S. fuel prices could skyrocket, triggering widespread inflation. According to numerous reports, a significant disruption to oil imports could result in a $0.5 per gallon increase in gas prices. That might seem like a small increase, but for a country that consumes more than 20 million barrels of oil per day, this could mean an additional $21 billion in fuel costs every month. This would be a direct hit to your household budget, especially if you live in an area heavily reliant on transportation for work or business. But there's more at stake
and on issues with energy, the cost of power, the cost of
Mexico's
gasoline.
potential leverage
So we
over oil
expect her to
supplies
focus more
could serve
attention.
as a strategic bargaining chip. President Claudia Sheinbaum has hinted that Mexico could take action if President Trump continues to push forward with his tariffs. The goal: undermining Trump's message of American energy independence by revealing the U.S.'s dependence on Mexican crude. This could lead to supply disruptions, pushing U.S. politicians into difficult positions where they may be forced to reconsider their tariff strategy to prevent further economic damage. The automotive industry is next in the firing line. The North American car market is intricately tied to Mexico, with Mexican workers and factories providing vital auto parts like engines, transmissions, and electronics. In fact, Mexico is the largest supplier of auto parts to the U.S., with imports from Mexico accounting for around $50 billion annually in parts. This makes up roughly 40% of the total automotive parts used in U.S. production, a significant portion. American automakers like Ford, Tesla, and General Motors rely on these parts to keep their production lines running smoothly. If Mexico retaliates by imposing tariffs on automotive exports, the consequences could be disastrous. A sudden disruption to the supply chain could leave factories scrambling to find alternatives, driving up production costs. According to automotive industry experts, a disruption of just 2 weeks in the flow of Mexican-made parts could lead to a $2 billion loss in production. Car prices would increase, and factories could face closures or even lay off workers. Imagine the hit to your wallet. If the price of new cars jumps due to higher manufacturing costs suddenly, the car you were planning to buy becomes unaffordable. Even if you don't work in the auto industry, you're still affected. Higher production costs would translate into higher car prices for consumers, making it more difficult for families to afford new vehicles. According to a study by Bernstein, US, automakers could see